Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto's Rinnegan was awakened. Realization struck Nagato at Naruto's words. In his last moments, Nagato awakens Naruto's Rinnegan in an effort to atone for his mistakes. Now, unknown to Naruto and Konan, the last pair of Jiraiya students are bound together by a higher calling to change the world for peace. This is a bond like no other. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. The last one. Chapter 1, Survivor. I understand, Naruto, Nagato wheezed, looking at the blonde-haired ninja. Nagato's body lay defenseless in front of the Konohanin, moving up and down from light breathing. Naruto looked at him sternly, quickly going through everything that went on in his mind. After hearing Nagato's explanation for his doings, Naruto knew what he was going through, but the Konohanin knew that it was the wrong way to go about the situation. Naruto finally broke Nagato's outer shell. That is why I have decided on a few things. Nagato returned, I will revive everyone I've killed recklessly. But before I do that, there is something you need to know. Naruto gazed upon the nearly lifeless man, now curious as to what the Rinnegan had to say. Konan looked at her friend as well, keeping quiet so she would not interrupt him. Her face was solemn but unsure of which emotion she needed. There are things about your family that you don't know. Things that were so dangerous that most of your relatives were killed in order to prevent chaos, Nagato croaked. He looked at the boy whose facial features softened from confusion. The truth is, your family held a very powerful bloodline trait, Naruto. This trait was so deadly that during the Second Great Shinobi War, everyone made an attempt to kill them. Well, if they're all dead, then how does that relate to me? The blonde nin bluntly asked. Nagato looked down at the boy, and then curled his lips upward. Two of them survived the war, Naruto. The leaf nin widened his eyes upon that response. Why, you mean, my father was a survivor? Nagato slightly chuckled, which followed by a hacking cough. Once he settled down, he continued. No, Naruto. Your mother was the one who survived. My mother? Naruto questioned. Nagato received glances from both Naruto and Konan, but merely shrugged them off with an indifferent composure. Yes, Naruto. Kushina Uzumaki was a survivor from the Shinobi War clan massacre. Her abilities were unawakened during the time of the massacre, so no one could tell her descent. She then moved to Konoha to hide from the killings and turned herself into a Konoha ninja. Naruto nodded at that, but then he realized something. Wait. If two of them survived, then who is the other one? Nagato looked at him with his breathing still ragged from chakra consumption. Then he dropped the seriousness that etched across his face to let out the gentlest smile he could muster and replied. I am, Naruto. Both Konan and the blonde-haired Jinchuriki face faulted at the Rinnegan wielder. What? Nagato. Is this true? Konan asked the red-headed man, who willingly shook his head in compliance. Yes, Konan, Naruto is my little cousin. The Konohanin didn't know what to say about all of this new evidence. Everything he knew about himself and his heritage brought itself into a new light. All he did was drop to his knees and bang his hand on the floor. A few tears shed from his face, followed by chants of why? And I can't believe it. Obviously from the sudden realization that had taken place. Don't be sad, Naruto. It was supposed to happen this way. Naruto looked up at Nagato with teary eyes, who gave him a comforting smile. He then got back up and wiped his face with his sleeve, feeling as if a boy shouldn't cry. Oh, so that's why you wanted him last. Is that why we never caught him as well? Konan asked, unsure of the situation. Nagato shook his head in agreement. That, and because Naruto is just so powerful, a slight snicker escaped his lips. Any information received about Naruto, I simply destroyed. I didn't want my cousin treated like some animal, like he had been treated for most of his life. Naruto's eyes widened again at the statement, "You've dash." "That's right. I have been watching you ever since you became a ninja. I've watched you grow into what you are today, and to say I'm impressed is an understatement. For a while, I thought you would have rebelled, but you kept your head held high. I guess that's something I envy about you." The redhead lowered his view from wandering eyes and softly continued, "That is why, before I go, I have something to give you." "Approach me, Naruto." The Konohanin was wary, but did as was told by taking reluctant steps closer to the man. Naruto heard a soft click on the left and right arm braces that held Nagato's hands. His arms trembled weakly as he tried to release them from the arm cuffs. Finally, he extracted his hands only to have them flop to his sides. The blonde ninja climbed onto the mechanized, four-legged vehicle, getting within reach of the Rinnegan wielder. Nagato smiled at the boy before him as he lifted his arms. He brought them up in great difficulty, placing his thumbs on both cheeks underneath the eyes of the Konohanin's face. He then placed both his index fingers and middle fingers on Naruto's temples, gaining full attention of the boy. "This may hurt a little at first, but it will go away in a moment," Nagato assured him, only to get a frightened look from the Leaf Ninja. The redhead then closed his eyes and began chanting a mantra, producing a lavender chakra through his fingers that seeped into Naruto's skin. Not even a moment later, the blonde ninja began screaming in agony. "Kayak!" Naruto choked out as the mantra continued. More chakra dispersed through his fingers as Nagato proceeded with the chant, which made small steam formations begin to appear around said fingers. Naruto closed his eyes as a burning sensation swept through his entire body. He felt like he was in his own personal hell as fire seemed to invisibly consume the boy, making all of his nervous system react to the painful feeling. This lasted for another few seconds before, finally, Nagato released his grip, in turn making Naruto fall to the floor with steam protruding from the Akatsuki's former finger placements. The Konohanin made several attempts to vomit, but never succeeded as the feeling died slowly. Naruto fought to get back up by fumbling a few times on his feet, but managed to reach full height again. His eyes stung to the degree that he had to keep them shut for the time being. A minute or so passed as Nagato started up again. "All right, Naruto. You can open your eyes now." The blonde-haired boy opened them and blinked a few times before fully focusing again. Nagato looked at Naruto and gave him a slight smile in confidence. "I have awakened your ability. The ability of the Rinnegan. It is not a full Rinnegan because you have not mastered it yet, but I don't see a problem with you increasing it to its fullest potential." Naruto looked at his reflection on one of the metal braces and realized that two violet rings had replaced his irises entirely. The scene caused him to jump back in amazement, in turn making him stumble over his own feet. Nagato started talking once Naruto jumped up to his feet again. "Yes, your eyes have turned to Rinnegan, but it's never permanently that way. You can turn it on or off whenever you use it, sort of like the Byakugan from the Hyuga clan." The blonde nin shook his head as the Rinnegan faded into his normal ocean blue eyes. Konan was speechless. The boy who had fought against them for so long was, in actuality, Nagato's cousin, another holder of the Rinnegan. Nagato must have full trust in this boy. "I have never seen him like this before," Konan thought as she gazed upon the two. A few minutes passed as Nagato finally spoke up. "Naruto, I am sorry about what I have done. Hopefully you will use the Rinnegan better than I have." The blonde-haired ninja looked at Nagato, and then gave him a sad smile. "By the time I have revived everyone, I will hopefully have moved on to a better place. My own peace." "Wait. No. You can't die," Konan shouted as she watched the man prepare himself. He looked at her solemnly, as if he was contemplating something, then gave her a happy glare. "It has to be done, Konan. I was foolish. I killed thousands of people trying to find an answer. Now I am paying for my actions. No. Please. I need you. I'll have no one left if you're gone." she returned. Naruto? Nagato called to him, completely ignoring his friend. The blonde Jinchuriki met the operator's gaze. Take care of Konan for me. Naruto nodded his head and watched as the Rinnegan wielder made a few hand signs to pour the rest of his chakra into the move. It took well over a minute before they witnessed Nagato's body go limp and all signs of life fade. Naruto sighed as he recalled everything that occurred previously. His very last family member died before his very eyes. A family member he never even knew he had. It brought on a feeling of remorse, which caused him to stifle tears by blinking a few times. Konan lay silent as she took in the information as well. Her best friend of many years revealed evidence that she never knew or didn't bother to put the pieces together. How could she have missed it? How could Nagato not tell her something of this importance? They were friends, right? I do remember something that happened when we received data regarding the Nine Tails. She looked at the blonde ninja, falling into a not-so-distant memory. Flashback. Pain held himself primarily in the desk room of his house in Amigakure, assorting papers and scrolls alike on whereabouts of Jinchuriki and other information such as conditions of other villages and teammates of the Akatsuki. His office was rather dark, only lit up by a small lamp to his left. Bookshelves littered his office with hundreds of books, old and new, and he had one massive wall-sized window looking out into the entire village. He came across the two-tailed Jinchuriki report and began glancing through the scroll looking for keywords containing any clues to her whereabouts. A knock rapped on his door, followed by a grunt from Pain signaling entrance to his office. Pain Taishu? Konan asked the orange-haired Akatsuki. Speak your matters. He replied, busy looking over the scroll. I have information regarding the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. She returned, pulling a scroll from a pouch underneath her cloak and placing it on his desk. Pain widened his eyes, placing them on the scroll. The Nine Tails? He reached his hand, laying it upon the wrapped paper. Then, with a swift motion, he opened the scroll. This was the first information he received of the Nine-Tailed Fox, so he wanted to read it as quickly as possible. Information came in the following. Report. Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto. Age, 12 years old. Demon, Kitsune. Hashtag of Tails, total of 9. Village of origin, Kanahagakure. Last known location, Kanahagakure. What? No, it can't be. He looked over it, and then over it a second time, a third time, even a fourth time, until it finally sank in. Uzumaki. The name dripped from his tongue in astonishment. He hadn't heard that name in nearly 13 years, and to say he was shocked was a poor choice of words. He was speechless. Another Uzumaki is still alive? Another Uzumaki? He mused to himself. He had received word of Kushina's death, but never knew she bore a son, much less a son that now possessed the Jinchuriki. Is something wrong? Konan, confused in the situation, asked her longtime friend, only to receive a sharp glare from Pain. Send for Itachi immediately. Konan felt paralyzed from the sudden outburst for a second, only to shrug it off and disappear into paper. She appeared with Itachi moments later, who gave Pain a silent stare. Itachi, there is a matter that has to be handled with utmost importance. The Uchiha still seemed unfazed while quietly eyeing the head Akatsuki. Continue. There is a boy from Kanahagakure that possesses the Kyuubi. I'm sure you have knowledge about the layout of Konoha. Itachi lightly nodded. That's why I need you to keep a full eye on this boy. Any new information you receive comes directly to me. I don't want anything happening to him. I want to be the one to face him. I'm sure you have an understanding as to why I'm doing this? The Uchiha raised a slight eyebrow from the barely noticeable signals the Akatsuki leader was gesturing. Konan didn't notice them, but Itachi very well did. He knew exactly what Pain was talking about, as if it were a mutual feeling that no one else could understand. Understood, Pain Taishu. And with that, the Uchiha disappeared by Shunshin. Shunshin. The orange-haired Akatsuki sat back down at his desk, unaware that he got up from his seat to relay the message. Konan looked at her friend unsure of what was going on in his mind, but she knew that deep down something was troubling him. They've known each other for a long time, so it's not as if anything Pain does would go unnoticed by her. Feeling she needs to find the underlying cause of the situation, Konan decides to ask him. Pain? She asked him with uncertainty in her voice. What is it, Konan? The Akatsuki had returned. She walked a little closer to him and held her weight on her palm to his desk. Is there a problem with the Ninetales? You seem hesitant. He stopped immediately what he was doing, which startled her slightly. Everything's fine, Konan. No need to worry. He's just the strongest one is all. He gave her an assured smile, but she wasn't buying it. You think you can hide it, but I know there's S-. Everything's fine, Konan. He shouted with more force than he wanted, which made the paper angel wince from the sudden noise. Well, if you ever need anyone to talk to, I am here, Nagato. She told the man while giving him a sad look. I know, Konan, I know. Pain replied breathlessly. He got up, walked over to the wall-sized window, and began looking out into the rain as if something was there. It seemed like he wanted to talk about it, but he just didn't have the heart to. Konan could feel his sadness radiating from him. She knew something was hurting inside of Pain. A new anguish that made him second-guess a couple of things. Maybe it was something she could help with. They have been friends since they were kids, so there shouldn't be anything that they couldn't tell each other. However, there was something that he didn't want to reveal to his friend, which left her slightly confused. Finally, she concluded that nothing else said could change his mind about it, so she asked one final question. Need me for anything else, Pain Taishu? She asked reluctantly. You're dismissed. He called. Yes, sir. The purple-haired Akatsuki responded, walking out of the door. She turned her head one last time to look at Pain, who was still gazing her into the rain-filled city lost in thought. She then lowered her head slightly and softly closed the door. End flashback. After she remembered that, she felt like a total idiot. All of that time she had to figure it out and she felt completely oblivious to it. Then her gaze turned back to Nagato. Her friend from umpteen years was dead. Her last friend from the trio, which now consisted of one, was dead. The realization finally hit her. Then for the first time since the war, she began to cry. She slumped to her knees and pushed her hands to the floor, a tear or two rolled from her cheeks as she continued to lightly sob. She didn't know what to do anymore. Her friend Nagato was head of the organization ever since Yahiko died. She could continue as leader, but there was no reason to continue a society that had no purpose anymore, since the previous owner defected himself before he passed on. She sobbed even more each time she thought about his death. Naruto watched her sulk in her own misery and started to feel sorry for the lowly Rinnegan. He didn't know what to do for Konan since she was once the enemy, but something told him that deep down inside, she too was human just like him. He walked over to her feeling the need to console her because he has been there before and he knows how it feels. Then she began to shout hysterically. Keep away from me. She began working her way to get farther from him. Konan, I understand how you feel. How dash? Shut up, up. You understand nothing. That last word had so much disgust in each syllable that it spat from her mouth like acid. Naruto tried to move closer, but she still wormed even farther until she reached a wall, continuing to sob with her face turned in an angle that blocked Naruto's view to see her cry. Stay away! Konan yelled, making Naruto wince. He knew she really didn't want him to keep away from her, but she really wasn't the type he would just up and hug either. He didn't know her too well, but Nagato did tell him to take care of her, so he went for second best. You think I didn't cry when Jiraiya-sensei died? I don't think that pain will ever go away. Jiraiya-sensei was my godfather. He began to feel enraged the more he thought about it. It was something he wanted to get off his chest for a very long time. He could not believe he was actually saying it, but there he was on autopilot, speaking whatever his heart felt now. He taught me almost everything. I wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for him. She still sobbed on the wall, not saying a word, which made Naruto vent even more. He slapped his hands on his face from the frustration, then screamed. I just killed my cousin. My last family member I will ever know is dead. I'm alone just as much as you are, damn it. He then kicked a stone across the cave, making it ricochet from the wall, until it landed several yards away. After that response, Konan looked up at him. Naruto was actually crying again, but his face wasn't sad. No, he had an enraged air about him now, something she had never seen before, which frightened her a bit. Try living with no family your whole life, and knowing everybody hates your guts. It'll give you a good kick in the teeth. That scenario seemed familiar to her. Then she remembered Nagato and his life. The sudden revelation brought Konan wide-eyed again. Nagato and Naruto weren't too much different. Nagato lost his parents in the war when he was young. The Rinnegan, he had made people shun him for what he was. Then she reviewed Naruto. From what she knew, his parents died when he was a baby and everybody shunned him for the QB sealed away inside of his body. Her mouth then dropped open upon that fact. You're right. Ha! Naruto responded. He didn't think it would stick to her this quickly, so it threw him for a loop. You are absolutely right, Naruto Uzumaki. She got up from her position, using the cave wall to prop herself up from the floor. She wasn't crying, but the tear stains and running mascara proved she did at one point. There are people who have suffered far worse than I have. I shouldn't embarrass myself with such trivial things. She then wiped her face with her palms to remove the emotional stains that covered her cheeks. Naruto's demeanor changed toward her after that. Noticing the way she was now, it made him finally realize that war does things to people. It was almost as if she was a scared child in an older body. He then sauntered himself over to the Rinnegan and gently placed his left hand on her shoulder. Look, Konan, I know it hurts, but there is no reason to beat yourself up about it. The only thing you can do now is keep moving forward, you know? She dared to look into his eyes, and saw a fire swelling deep within those pools of ocean blue. The same fire someone she once loved had at one point, and just for a split second, she thought it was this person. An unnoticed smile grew on her facial features. Her smile was not enough to show appreciation for Naruto's attempt to console her, but just enough to show she concluded in her mind about something. Well, Naruto started scratching his cheek with his index finger, breaking eye contact by embarrassment. I could. Ask if you could, I don't know. Join Konoha or something. That statement broke her ruminations. The sheer thought of her joining the Leaf seemed preposterous. She was an S-rank criminal who was in the most feared organization of the land. Her smile faded as she shook her head in rejection. As sweet as the offer sounds, I don't think I can. She lowered her head and moved a few feet from Naruto. But Konan, I could tell them that you changed your mind about your ways or you helped me No, Naruto, I just can't. She interrupted, staring him in the eyes. If I tried to leave to your village, they would only ask for my execution. Naruto stared at her in disbelief. She seemed like she wanted to go. He could see the sadness in her eyes even though it wasn't apparent at the moment. Nevertheless, even though there was sadness, her lips seemed to say something else to reject the boy. But. No buts. Konan retorted, disrupting his sentence again. Now if you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to. She turned to leave the cave, only to receive an angry look from the blonde Nin. But I'm supposed to protect you. Naruto burst, clenching his fists. Konan stopped dead in her tracks. A gasp entered her lungs as once again, another thing about this boy reminded her of Yahiko. The orange-haired ninja had said that to Konan one last time before he died. The girl was very distraught about the death of her teammate, since she did have a crush on him after all. But after Nagato replaced him as Akatsuki leader, neither one of them spoke about it again. The purple-haired Nin then looked at Naruto, who flustered looking for an answer. Not like that. I meant, Nagato told me to protect you so. His sentence cut itself short as she walked over and gently wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't an affectionate hug. It wasn't even a friendly hug. It was just a simple hug of compassion. Just as soon as he got used to the feeling, she quickly pulled back, making sure to signal to him that it was not a pass. While her arms came from around his chest, she held out something to him. Flowers? The blonde Nin asked. Konan was holding a bouquet of origami flowers. Naruto had never seen anything like them before, so he was a little curious. It's a sign of friendship and trust, Konan told the boy before he grabbed them. He eyed them studiously, alternating between her and the flowers. I can't go with you, Naruto, I have another village to look after, she continued as the ex-Akatsuki began to take her leave. Naruto fumbled quickly, trying to think of what to say. Well, will I ever see you again? She turned her head to him. A smile came over her features as she did a shunshin by paper from her spot, leaving an anxious and confused Naruto. Chapter 2, Retrieval. It had been nearly 3 days since the great revival of Konoha. Since the day Naruto found out that he was the last Rinnegan user. This came as a shock to him, and caused him to reflect upon his life, and what he really knew about himself. To be honest, he hasn't been acting as himself ever since he came back to the Leaf Village. Sure, he enjoyed the celebration after his return to Konoha, but the celebration seemed hollow. Should they really be having a victory party from the death of his cousin? Most people, who were either hammering walls or cementing floors, stopped immediately what they were doing to greet the savior of the village. As he walked through town, the village acknowledged cheerfully to the Uzumaki, either giving him a pat on the shoulder or telling him simple words of encouragement. A lot of times, there will even be little kids that would encircle him and ask him to play. Sometimes he would agree, but most recently he began to decline them, saying that he was too busy at the moment. He really wasn't busy at the time, he was just in no mood to join the children in their time to fool around. Ichiraku wouldn't be built for another day or two, so he scuffed his feet all the way to his newly built apartment that was in place of the original. The entire village contributed to his apartment by making it slightly bigger than the original. There was an additional room and an expanded kitchen. Even the bathroom saw an increase in size as it nearly doubled in width, leaving plenty of leg room to walk around. He unlocked the door and slowly trudged inside. The scent of fresh paint and newly cut wood filled his nostrils as he walked through his recently acquired home. He looked to his left and right and saw the brand new furniture and food that loaded his house. The new food piled to the ceiling with ribbons, cans, condiments, and many different types of homemade food. All of this food would take him a whole week and a half to eat even a fraction of it. Honestly, he started feeling overwhelmed by the amount of attention. Something you wouldn't expect from the supposed #1 hyperactive ninja everyone claimed him to be. He could also understand why the people were so giving. The people were indebted to him, and had to repay him somehow for saving their lives. So, with nothing else to do, he sat down and took a rest on his new sofa. He placed his palm underneath his chin and stared out of the wide window that overlooked the street. People were still busily working on other buildings. Seeing the people doing this made him think of an anthill. Even though the anthill gets destroyed, the ants always come out and rebuild as if nothing ever happened. Then his attention fell on the origami flowers. He placed them in a vase and put it on the windowsill the day before as a reminder of the alliance he and Konan now share with the leaf and rain. Alliance, huh? He asked, looking at the blue flowers. He twiddled them between his index and middle fingers, staring at them blankly. Give me what I seek. Tobi/Madara asked the half-beaten girl. You will gain nothing but death by fighting me. Konan looked at him, clenching her arm, trying to staunch the pain. Her body tingled in agony with each breath she took. The chakra reserves in her body depleted her energy to move too vigorously, as it was a chore to even keep on her feet while she stood there encompassed with paper. Tobi/Madara came for Nagato's body to simply steal the Rinnegan and obtain the secrets and uses of the ability, but was welcomed with a deathly encounter with the blue-haired ex-Akatsuki. "I will never let you take him." Her fury began to overweigh her safety, but she didn't care. As long as she kept her friend away from the hands of the grabber, she would risk her life to make sure nothing was disturbed. "Fool! Do you know who I am?" he bellowed. "I don't care who you are. I will die before I let you take him." A fire burned in her eyes as she said that. Her will was flaming fiercely. The orange-masked man looked at her for a few seconds, and then smirked under his mask. "So be it." He formed a few hand signs and released an unavoidable fireball jutsu. It went so fast that Konan couldn't get out of the way even if she wanted to. The flames surrounded her body and burned her skin, causing her to scream in excruciating pain. Her final resistance was overrun as she fell limply to the ground. Tobi/Madara looked at the girl, and then placed his eyes on Nagato with delight. He released his space-time jutsu and sucked in Nagato's body to another dimension by his Sharingan. Just when he was about to leave, a quick figure made an attempt to attack Tobi by ramming through the man with a spiraling sphere of chakra. The masked man went intangible as the figure went straight through him, causing the Rinnegan to explode on the ground, forming a crater with dust and debris taking the air. Tobi looked in the direction the person resided and saw a figure standing on the opposite end of the room. Konan staggered her head to look up and saw an orange blur appear in front of her. Her facial features softened slightly once she realized who it was. "Naruto?" she asked weakly as the boy guarded her. "Sorry it took me so long, Konan." The blonde nin told her unwavered. He was steadily leering at Tobi/Madara, making sure the Uchiha didn't make any early starts. The orange-masked Akatsuki stared at the boy. He felt something different about him, as if his power increased twofold. This feeling, Madara thought, still receiving glares from the Konoha. This boy. This power. How did he get so much stronger in such a short amount of time? He looked at the boy again, and this time his eyes lingered onto Naruto's. "What?" Madara thought out loud. "What is this?" Their eyes interlocked each other's gaze as Tobi found himself staring into the boy's eyes. The Rinnegan. Madara then, for the first time in a while, felt a little fear for his safety. The orange-masked man knew he was no match for Naruto in his current state, as Tobi did not have the Rinnegan yet. He needed a viable excuse to make his leave, because if the Akatsuki made one false move, the show was over. He looked to Naruto and calmly spoke. "It is not our time to fight, boy." Tobi answered, taking baby steps away from the Konoha. He already accomplished his objective, so there was no need to fight the blonde. Then with a wispy sound, he disappeared by using his space-time jutsu. Naruto clenched his fists, but let it go, as he thought he would never be able to catch Madara now, or he didn't want to get into a place where Madara had the advantage and could easily take out the blonde nin. The Rinnegan faded from his eyes as he turned his attention to Konan. She had fallen unconscious from the chakra consumption, and burn marks scattered all over her body. Her cloak was torn in many places and her hair was slightly singed on the ends. Blood fell from her mouth and dirt marks littered her body as well. A melancholy emotion overtook his features. When he looked at her, the sight of a nearly lifeless person laying on her deathbed, it made his stomach cringe. No one should have to suffer like this. "Don't worry, Konan, I'll get you somewhere safe." He hefted her bridal style and found her to be a little lighter than he thought, but shook that distraction as he dashed for his life. Konan felt weightless as she laid there, letting her consciousness roam freely. She felt as if she had a fever and couldn't get up because she was too weak. Her fingertips felt cold against her face as she basked in the cool sensation it gave her. Then to her left, a shadowy figure came over and laid a cool rag on her forehead. She calmed even more and let out a relaxing sigh as the rag permeated the icy feeling through her forehead. She looked over to her right a little and saw a spiky-haired shadow. The silhouette looked over her with a solemn face, like he was hoping the girl would wake. The figure seemed like he knew her, but her roaming conscience made it seem like she knew him as well. Konan tried to get a better view of the boy by turning her head more in his direction. Just then, her senses suddenly fell sharp as she remembered who he was. She began to slightly tear up as she called his name. Yahiko! She shouted, tearing out of the bed. Ignoring the dropped rag, she wrapped her arms around the figure who accepted without hesitation by embracing the girl. She sat there for a moment, continuing her hug and silently sobbing. A minute or so passed as the figure started talking. He seemed hesitant, but needing to say something. Konan-san? The shadow asked. I'm glad you're happy that I saved your life, but do you have to hug so tightly? Her thought processes terminated as she slowly drew her head up from the figure's shoulder. She knew whose voice that was all too well, as in her arms sat a confused and flushed Naruto. She recalled what happened, and not a split second later, she jerked away, as a slight blush filled her cheeks from the already somewhat feverish face. I am sorry. I thought. Never mind. Her lips pursed as her sight fell on the bed. Naruto looked at her, and then looked at his arms. That feeling he felt from Konan when he held her was something he always wanted to feel. He had also wished to know what it would feel like to be loved like Konan seemed to have showed to him. For the moment, she seemed to be in a state of longing for the boy, which left him feeling a little sad about the sudden jerk away from the girl. If only he could wrap his arms around her again. Wait a minute. What am I thinking? Gyah. Pull yourself together, Naruto, he said, shaking his head. He then pinched and pulled his two cheeks apart to try and erase the memory and thoughts that began to plague his mind. You don't like Konan-san. You can't. She's like way older than you. Just remember, you still have Sakura-chan to worry about. Yeah, that's right. Naruto-san? Konan asked quietly. Hum? Naruto glanced back at her, repressing any memories that floundered in his mind. Where am I? She returned in the same tone as before. Oh well, we're in Konoha Hospital. He replied cheekily. Konoha. She exclaimed. But how? Well. He started while scratching his whisker marks. It's a long story. Flashback. Tsunade sat in her recovery bed in the Konoha hospital. After fighting pain, she seemed to have fallen into a coma from the long and painful fight that fell in the village. Her thoughts were a little hazy about what actually happened, so if anyone asked her about what took place, she wouldn't give him or her a clear answer. When she awoke in her hospital bed, Shizune and many others filled in the details in what occurred previously. To say she was surprised that Naruto defeated pain was an understatement. She was thrilled. It seemed that Naruto was filling Jiraiya's shoes, not only by becoming a sage, but also in his personality as well. Depending on how long you are around a person, you tend to become more like them. In Naruto's case, he was almost a spitting image of Jiraiya's persona when the sage was younger, minus the perverted side. But she didn't think on it for too long, as the Godame had a major headache that throbbed in her frontal lobes. It was a headache that made her want to smash her face with a hammer to get rid of the sensation. To see the nine-tailed Jinchuriki burst through the door only made matters worse. Hey, Granny Tsunade. I need your help. He screamed as he roamed to her bed. Naruto? What's the meaning of this, barging into my room like a madman? The Godame asked, a little irritated. The headache made her more irate than she would have been normally, but Naruto merely shrugged off the attitude by answering the reason why he was there. Well, you see, I have this problem. He fidgeted. Well, I have this friend who is seriously injured, and I need to get them to a room to be healed as soon as possible. The Hokage looked at him like he was slightly idiotic. Usually, people ask her for more king-like favors as in doing a mission or asking to retrieve something of major significance, not something this mediocre. Why are you asking me? If someone is injured, then take them to the medical nin. You don't have to ask my permission for something like that. She replied, bothered by the seemingly stupid scenario. That's the problem. If I tried to bring this person in, the medical nin might reject her treatment. Tsunade shot a questionable look to the boy. She was sort of intrigued by who Naruto had in his mind. It also made her a little nervous because the medical nin usually heal anyone except enemies of the nation. Who do you actually have, Naruto? Her voice dropped lividness and had a more serious tone. She went straight to the point, keeping Naruto from beating around the bush. Well, if I tell you, you have to heal her, promise? The blonde nin asked, almost pleading. It doesn't work that way, Naruto. Now tell me who it is. Tsunade snapped, causing the Jinchuriki to jump. Naruto cast his head downward, and then reluctantly strolled over to Tsunade, making sure that no one except her could hear. Specifically keeping wandering Anbu ears from eavesdropping, he started to whisper. Konan from the Akatsuki. What? She yelled that echoed through the whole place. Anbu quickly filled the area, trying to figure out what was going on. What's going on, Lady Hokage? Is there an intruder? No, you idiots, leave this room at once. This is a matter between me and Naruto here. Tsunade interjected. The Anbu felt a tad disappointed, but left as quickly as they came, making sure not to enrage the Hokage. She kneaded her forehead, letting out a sigh as she did so. This was making her head hurt more than necessary. Naruto was always good at giving her a hard time, and it seemed like he was doing it again. This time she was interested why he wanted her rehabilitated though, so she started a barrage of questions. Why do you want her healed, Naruto? Does she have good information? She asked, a little confused. It's not every day that someone wants an enemy restored to their original status. Naruto shook his head furiously. No. She's a friend now. She's not even with the Akatsuki anymore. Tsunade lowered her gaze. She felt bad for Naruto as he was still a teenager who didn't fully know the rules. Look, just because she left the Akatsuki, it doesn't mean that all of her actions toward the Leaf Village are forgiven. Naruto frowned at that statement. I know. It's just that Nagato told me to take care of her. I didn't know any other way than to bring her to the place that is the safest to me. Konoha. He told her softly. Wait a minute. The Hokage interrupted. Nagato told you to take care of her? Naruto looked at her again and replied quickly. Yeah, he trusted me with that request, and I have to live up to it. So can you do it? He was getting riled up from his words just thinking about it. The more he sat here, the closer Konan was to death, and he had to idly wait by. She could be dead right now, and he wouldn't even know it. Tsunade was unaware of the anger and continued to ask more questions. Well, why would he want you to protect her? He knew you were the enemy. Naruto then clenched his fists. Because Nagato and I came to an understanding with each other. He trusts me. Can you heal her? He also gritted his teeth from the dragging on this conversation did. But that still doesn't make any sense that he would trust you. You were the Tsunade was cut off as Naruto finally had it. Because he's my cousin. He trusts me. He finally screamed, causing a great panic from Tsunade. The Hokage's eyes widened intensely as she gained a view of Naruto. He was staring heatedly at her now, but that wasn't the reason why she was wide-eyed. She looked into the Jinchuriki's eyes and saw the two violet circles on each iris. She gained a full view of the Rinnegan Naruto now possessed. Her speech became hoarse as she felt a spell wash over her, but she automatically regained her composure, feeling the need to say something. The Rinnegan? She choked out. The Godame was at a loss. She just received information that she never knew, and now it seemed that Naruto now obtained the Rinnegan as well. Yes, Naruto started. His last gift to me was the Rinnegan. He gave it to me right before he died and entrusted me with the gift to protect his last best friend and find true peace. His gaze faltered as he found himself looking at the floor. And that's what I'm going to do. I don't care if people hate me for doing this, because if they were in my shoes, they would do the same thing. So, are you going to help me or not? Tsunade was speechless. Things were jumbled in her head and she couldn't think clearly. Maybe it was the headache that caused this mishap, or maybe it was all of this new information that she never knew in the first place. It's not like anyone could give her a plausible answer. She tried to find something to say to the blonde-haired Jinchuriki, only to open her mouth not say a word. It stayed like that for a few more seconds before Naruto turned his head to the door. Fine. Fine. If you won't help, I will find someone who will. He said his final words and went for the door. Tsunade felt she had to say something, so she shouted his name. Naruto. What? He retorted lividly, turning his head to her direction. Well, I can't do it because I am still in the hospital, but I think I can get someone else to help you. What made her change her mind was never really clear, but Naruto seemed to have gotten through to her in some way. Tsunade didn't even know what words were coming from her own mouth. It almost made her dizzy by the event that was taking place, as seeing Naruto this way seemed totally unlike him. He was usually happy and carefree, a little arrogant in some way too, but never hot-headed. The last time she saw him this way seemed to be when he was trying to bring her back to Konoha. Naruto had to fight Orochimaru along the way. He was mad that day too, but it looked like he only gets short-tempered when he is protecting someone. That's one of his better qualities. She thought deeply, but then automatically continued her response to Naruto. Report. She yelled, summoning the cloaked characters from the front door to the hospital room. Yes, Lady Hokage. The ANBU guards replied in unison. Bring in Hirono Sakura. Tell her to drop everything immediately and come to my room. It is an emergency. She answered forcefully. Yes, Lady Hokage. They replied again in unison. They both instantly disappeared by Shunshin, leaving Naruto and Tsunade alone again. You're helping me? Naruto turned back to the lady, who gave him a pitiful look of some sort. Yes. I don't know why, but I trust your decision, Naruto. She felt complacent with that answer as she scanned the room. Don't worry, I will have a room secluded specifically for her in this infirmary so no one harms her. Tsunade responded shortly after. The look on her face changed as her eyes lingered to the ceiling with an annoyed gesture. It's not going to be easy explaining this one. When he heard the Godame's robust statement, it made him feel like a weight had been lifted off of his shoulders. Thank you, Tsunade-sama. The Hokage blinked a couple of times when those words spoke from Naruto's mouth. She had never been spoken to so formally by him before. It was almost unnerving to hear the maturity from the blonde nin. Yeah, I want a better explanation of everything that took place in your fight with Nagato, so don't forget. She finalized before Sakura and a few ANBU appeared. Yes, milady? Sakura asked, completely oblivious to Naruto's appearance. The ANBU quickly disappeared afterward from a signal the Hokage passed to them. Sakura, I want you to accompany Naruto and do whatever he asks of you. No questions asked. Tsunade started. But, Lady Tsunade. Sakura burst before she received a raising hand from the Hokage. I don't want to hear it. The Sannin interjected. This is something that has to be handled with utmost importance. Whatever you were doing previously has to be done later. This is a matter between life and death. Tsunade told the girl, unwavered. Sakura looked over to Naruto, who seemed like he wanted to run in whatever direction possible to do what Tsunade was asking. He had an ache in his eyes that wasn't really apparent unless you knew him for a long time. Sakura has known him for the last 4 years of her life, so it was not like things he felt would just slip by her. Concern washed over her face as she felt worried for her friend. "Yes, milady," Sakura finally replied. Naruto couldn't hold it in anymore. He sprinted out of the door and ran to the desired location at breakneck speeds. "Wait. Naruto!" Sakura shouted only to get no response from the blonde nin. Naruto was in his own little world. He couldn't hear or say anything, since the only thing he was worried about at the moment was laying on the Konoha hospital rooftop. It was somewhere inconspicuous so no one would dare touch the person or even bother to look. It was getting harder for Sakura to keep up because Naruto was still running and didn't want to stop or showed any signs to. She tried calling him several more times, but the boy simply ignored her. Once they reached the roof, Naruto took a sharp left and veered into a corner of the building, dodging around vents and air conditioning units. He finally stopped and kneeled down next to a larger vent that had nothing around it. Sakura was confused, but only for a moment, as Naruto dispelled a genjutsu to reveal a beaten and tattered Konan lying next to the vent. The ex-Akatsuki was barely breathing and looked as if she were clinging onto life by a single thread. "Naruto, is this?" Sakura started, but stopped once she saw the Jinchuriki's face. He had a look of contempt to the girl as she lay there helpless. It was as if he was thinking hard about something. Then, without changing his gaze on the blue-haired woman, he asked Sakura a question. "Can you heal her?" Each word seemed to cut through the air like a razor. He was dead serious about this. He really wanted an enemy of the nation healed. He didn't even really know this person too well, but he would heal her with no hesitation? She looked at him like he was doing something stupid and received no glares from him as his eyes were still fixated on the Rinnegan. "Naruto, you can't be serious. She is the enemy." "Why would you She abruptly stopped as she saw a tear fall from the boy's cheek. "Because I promised a friend," the boy replied hoarsely. "Please, Sakura, can you please heal her?" His gaze did not leave the blue-haired girl's face. Sakura looked at her friend and then looked at the Rinnegan again, as she contemplated for a second or two, not really knowing what was going on in the boy's head. "All right, Naruto, but we're going to have to remove her Akatsuki cloak and any other identifiable items, if we want to do this without any problems," she answered to the blonde nin. Naruto lightly nodded his head as he watched Sakura. Konan no longer had the light blue origami flower on her head, which may have fallen off previously from her encounter with Tobi, so Sakura went for her Akatsuki cloak instead. She pulled off the Rinnegan's cloak to reveal attire unseen. She pulled the red and black cloak to reveal a dark blue zip-up robe that began zipping right above the navel and flared out around her waist. The robe also had no sleeves and left her back bare, allowing easy mobility. His eyes followed Sakura's movements as she continued unclothing the other woman. The missing cloak also revealed skin-tight pants that matched the robe in color, with a wrapped pouch below her hip. Of course, the clothes she wore were torn and dirted, but they were ignored as Sakura went up to remove all of Konan's piercings, starting with her lip. Once she was through with that, the lifeless girl offered no resistance as Sakura finally removed her belly button piercings as well, leaving open holes on her bruised but fair skin. "Now," Sakura started, "I will only restore her enough to keep her alive for now. The rest of the healing will have to be done in the hospital." He made a silent agreement as Sakura then gently placed her hands on Konan's body, taking the proper steps any medical ninja would be required to do in extreme conditions. Naruto watched as a chakra with a greenish glow began quivering around the medic nin's hands. Her eyelids fell as she examined the Rinnegan's damage. "She has a couple of ruptured organs with 4 broken ribs, and one of those ribs has lodged itself into her heart," Sakura announced sadly. "If I pull it out now, she will bleed internally. So, what do we do? Will she live?" Naruto quietly asked in a tone not usually heard by the pink-haired girl. Well, I can heal her ruptured organs and treat her burns, but we need a medic team to do the rest. Even with all of the things we know now about healing, it is kind of hard to say. She finalized. After taking a breath, she continued. All right, here goes nothing. Then with that, she began to heal the ex-Akatsuki. Naruto fell silent as he resounded what Sakura told him. Konan was way more abysmal than he thought originally. The Rinnegan he was told to protect could actually die, and there wouldn't be anything he could do about it, but she couldn't die now. If he learned anything about his fight with Nagato, then he would know that no matter what happens, always have hope. That was what Naruto believed to begin with, so what made him change his mind now? Nothing. Nothing at all. His attitude altered slowly as memories flooded his head of the struggles he went through as a kid. All of the trials and tribulations he faced kept beating him down and wanting him to stay that way, but Naruto's determination made him rise against every factor that was laid upon him. Sakura stole a glance of his face change as he stood up. She could see the look in his eye. After that revelation of what he originally stood for, his face changed from one of sadness to one of serious fortitude. She'll live. I just know it. He responded out loud. Of course, it wasn't really known whether or not she would live, but the boy didn't lose optimism. He was highly confident in his answer as he stared at the blue-haired girl. Sakura looked at her good friend, then glanced back down at the lowly Rinnegan. Naruto. What do you see in her? She thought apprehensively as she continued her treatment. Konan's face slowly improved from its previous painful expression to a softer, calmer fashion. The burn marks also faded gradually as Sakura continued her mystical palm technique, now keeping her focus solely on the ex-Akatsuki. A few moments later, the pink-haired medic finished her treatment. I've done all I can for now. She started while lifting herself from the roof. The rib will have to be done in the hospital because it takes more than one person for a job like that, okay? He mutely looked at her, and then turned his observation back to Konan. A slight smile grew on his features because of the noticeable improvements that were shown on the character's body. She now looked somewhat happier from all of the restoration that took place. Then, without hesitation, he picked up the blue-haired ninja gingerly the same way as before and started back into the hospital. Naruto? Sakura asked with a reached hand, but was once again denied recognition from the blonde-haired boy. Her eyes wandered on the blonde ninja for a few moments before she heaved a sigh and followed suit. The pitter-patter of feet echoed off the hospital walls as the duo wandered aimlessly for a room to place Konan into. It kind of angered them that they did not have an escort, because they didn't know what room they were supposed to go to, that is, until a couple of ANBU appeared in front of them by Shunshin. This way. One of the black-cloaked figures replied sternly. Naruto and Sakura looked and nodded at each other in silent unison, then trailed behind the two Black Ops members. They all reached a room at the end of another hall to the right, and were welcomed with an operating table, and several other medic quietly waiting for their patient. It seemed as though the Hokage had kept her end of the bargain, so Naruto felt a little more appreciation toward the Sannin. There were also two other ANBU inside the emergency room, probably there to see that the recovery makes a success without any tampering or secret assassination attempts. Naruto slowly walked into the operating room and placed the Rinnegan's limp body carefully on the table. Not even a moment later, a few medic began to operate on the ex-Akatsuki. Sakura then quickly filled them in on what she did and what was wrong with the woman before one of the other medical walked over to both Naruto and Sakura and calmly shooed them out. Don't worry, we'll take it from here. She replied softly to both of the young Leaf closing the door behind their exit. End flashback. I see. Konan said quietly. They had just finished a hospital lunch as the blonde Jinchuriki slurped up whatever he had left of his soup after he finished his story. She looked down and noticed the bandages wrapped around her figure. She was almost mummified from the percentage that covered up most of her body. Most of these bandages seemed to be covering her recently burned areas, as well even though she was healed earlier, Maybe because the skin is fresh and far more sensitive than her skin was before. Her eyes fell on Naruto, who gave her a foxy grin in return. It seemed that Naruto went out of his way to stay true to his promise that he made to Nagato. Even though she was sort of an enemy to him still, he tried his best to revive her and live up to his older cousin's wishes. Maybe I can trust him, Konan thought in her mind as she reflected upon previous occurrences. He seemed to be way more trustworthy than she thought originally. I don't understand him at all. He even revived an enemy of the nation at his village's expense. It doesn't make any sense, but maybe it would be a good idea to get to know this boy as well. Chapter 3, Unstable Establishment. Maybe I should get to know this boy, she thought as she turned her head to the blonde nin. Naruto-san. He replied back to her. His face was still cheeky, but it also had a look of interest as well. How long have I been in this infirmary? She answered not even a second later. Oh. You've been here, going on 3 days now? Naruto responded, answering his rhetorical question and hers. 3 days? Konan asked herself. She has been in Konoha for 3 days and no one has started a riot or a mob demanding total annihilation of the girl. She was an Akatsuki member. Didn't they want her dead? How is this possible? She asked in complete denial. The question caused an awkward look on Naruto as he turned sheepish and began rubbing the back of his head. Well, he started but then began fidgeting. The village doesn't know yet. Only a handful of people know you are actually here, but they can't tell anybody. Not until we know exactly what to do about the situation. He finished, gazing around the room. Was all she could say about that. It seemed as though her life was spared for the time being, but then another thought struck her. Nagato. The blue-haired girl whispered, receiving a look from Naruto, who was clearing his ruminations. Ha! The blonde ninja asked as he didn't quite hear what she said. Nagato. Where's Nagato? Did you save him from Madara? She started back louder than ever. Naruto looked at her, then dropped his eyesight to the ground forlorn. Konan automatically knew what the answer was from the boy's gestures alone. Don't tell me. She asked the boy before it caused her to sink low on her bed and clench her fists. Damn it, she began, I had everything planned to defeat him. I was ready for whatever he threw at me, and I failed. Her voice began to quiver as she continued her rant. I went through so many scenarios in my head, I even calculated timing between tactics, and I couldn't even protect my best friend. Her voice cracked and tears began to well up in her eyes. She had worked hard to prevent the kidnapping of Nagato's body, but all she really achieved was knowing that she was too weak to protect her last friend from the clutches of darkness. Naruto looked at the girl plainly. A feeling of guilt washed over his body as he thought about what had previously occurred because he also failed at getting Nagato's body back. Just the thought made him want to beat himself up after causing another pain to someone. He then remembered what the older Uzumaki told him once Naruto received his Rinnegan. Take care of Konan for me. Blame me, the blonde Jinchuriki told the woman. She looked at him with widened eyes as he glared upon her. What? I was the one who let him get away with his body. I had a chance to save him, and I blew it. His face showed signs of anger, but he still kept a serious tone. Hit me. He pointed to himself with his thumb and lowered his defenses in front of her. But I don't she started, but was immediately interrupted by Naruto. I said hit me. His eyes still gleamed with seriousness. Don't put the blame on yourself. Blame me instead. She slowly raised her hand and curled it into a fist as she thought about everything she hated. All of her loathing was going directly into her hand as she finally built up enough strength to hit the boy. Naruto braced for impact as Konan's fist came hurtling towards him. The blonde then shut his eyes, hoping that it wouldn't hurt, only to feel nothing. A few seconds passed as he slowly opened his eyes again. "I can't do it," she replied in a hoarse whisper. "I can't blame you for what happened." Her fist fell to her side as she lost all means to slaughter the boy. Lost for words, Naruto just stood there. Yet again, he didn't think that it would click to her as easily as it just did. Maybe he was underestimating her? "If I told myself you did it, then I would be lying." Her gaze faltered back to her bed as she continued, "It wasn't your fault. It was his. Madara's." Such distaste spewed from her mouth every time she talked about him. If words could kill, he would have died 1,000,000 times over. "Look, I'm sorry I can't bring him back," Naruto began, pacing around the room, "but I will keep my promise to Nagato. I promise I will make peace with everyone and make people finally understand one another. I will become Hokage." Konan quit her self-loathing and curiously observed the boy. He turned to look at her, then gave her his trademark grin. She couldn't help but smile slightly at the young leaf Nin before a certain Hokage came through the door along with Sakura. Tsunade gave her a once-over before speaking. "I see you've made a full recovery." The blue-haired Nin sized up the go dame as well before speaking, and let her true emotions fade for the moment. "I see you have as well," she said without much emphasis. "Yes, well, I can handle my own," Tsunade continued, "but I did not come here for idle chat. I came here for another reason altogether." "Then why are you here, Granny?" Naruto asked, slightly confused in the matter. "I was just about to get to that," she said, gaining full attention of both Konan and Naruto. Her eyes then looked at the ex-Akatsuki. "The reason I am here is to get you tested. We clearly can't have an enemy of Konoha living here without any clarification of non-malicious intent." "Living here?" Konan shouted abruptly. "I didn't say I was joining the Leaf Village." Tsunade shot her an evil glare. "You are in no position to argue. Naruto saved your life and brought you to this village, and it was because of him that I have decided to spare your existence as well." Konan threw her eyes to her bed and reflected silently, not really knowing what to say. "I could just sign for your execution here and now and be done with you, but you could prove to be a valuable asset to this village, being as how you have trained under Jiraiya, who was one of the legendary Sannin, such as myself, and you are a former member of Akatsuki nonetheless. That is why, henceforth, you have been disregarded as the S-rank Nukenin you once were. You are now known as Konan of the Leaf with probation rights." Lady Tsunade," Sakura stated questioningly, "is it really a good idea to enlist an Akatsuki as a Leaf Nin?" Tsunade turned her gaze to Naruto, who was staring at her with a slight smile, then turned her attention to Sakura. "If Naruto believes in her, then it wouldn't hurt to give her a shot. I've already talked to the council, and they have fully agreed to allow her stay as long as the probation is in effect." "It wasn't easy though." The pink-haired girl looked at the Godame cautiously as a sign that she really didn't know if it was the right choice. Tsunade sighed and turned her view to the concerned medic Nin. "Don't worry," she whispered, "I'm sure there is a good reason why Naruto wants to do this. She then looked at the blonde and switched to the blue-haired Leaf Nin, "even if it doesn't make any sense." She finalized to Sakura before continuing her original response to Konan. "There will be clothes sent to this room for you to change into. Afterwards, ANBU will arrive, and you will immediately go to the interrogation chambers for your cross-examination to see if you're actually hiding something." Tsunade turned for the door and shifted her head to match eyes with Konan. "God help you if you are." She then walked out of the room with Sakura trailing behind, taking her final glance as well before closing the door behind them. Konan slumped in her bed in defeat. It seemed she had no choice in the matter anymore about where she could go or what she could do. If she tried to escape in her current weakened state, she would only get caught and put to trial on instant treason. Things would not go well, and it would only mean the end of her. "Well, I believe you'll pass, and no sweat," Naruto assured the new Leaf Nin with his wide smile. She looked at him and saw the warmness etched across his face. It caused her to barely smile again to the boy, and she couldn't understand it. "There's something about him. Something I can't describe." "What is this feeling?" She mused a couple of more seconds before Naruto started walking away. Naruto-san, where are you going? Oh, Naruto started, well, Captain Yamato wanted to see me. He told me after I got done in the hospital, I should see him immediately. Oh. Konan silently added. There was obviously a hint of unease in her voice, and the Jinchuriki noticed it. Don't worry. You'll do fine. You're not like the others and... I can see that, Naruto added with a thumbs up before making his final leave. The door clicked softly as silence enveloped the room, leaving Konan alone on her bed to reflect. Naruto hopped over a few buildings and darted through various people, until he reached a single building on the other end of the construction mess on the opposite side of the village. It was dull in color and lacked any enthusiasm in the creativity department. It didn't have a door as it only had two flaps in front of the doorway slowly wafting in the breeze. It was probably used previously for medical treatment, seeing as how it had stretchers laying around it and various other medical equipment. Now it was abandoned as Konoha had a hospital again. Well, this was where Captain Yamato wanted to see me. He replied to himself unenthusiastically. Naruto pushed the flap around his body as he made his way into the room. The room was a little stale and still looked messy with many needles and bandages lying around. The only thing that seemed new was the bodies of the ninja who occupied the building. Yamato noticed the boy and not too soon responded to his arrival. Ah. I see you've made it. Yo, Kakashi responded to the boy, who only looked a little puzzled at the masked man's greeting. Wait a minute. What's Kakashi-sensei doing here? The blonde asked as Yamato walked over to the Jinchuriki. Kakashi looked at the boy, then at Yamato before he let out a smile underneath his mask. Well, it's no big deal, but we heard from Lady Tsunade that Nagato did something to you before he died. We just want to make sure nothing affects the Kyuubi's final seal is all. That's right, Naruto, Yamato stated, whatever he did to you could affect the seal and ultimately release the Kyuubi from its cage. That is why we have to check your body for anything abnormal. Oh yeah. Naruto banged his hand in his other palm. I haven't shown you yet, have I? Yamato looked at Kakashi before the masked man spoke up to the blonde Jinchuriki. Shown us what? Not long after that, Naruto concentrated for a second before he finally yelled out, Rinnegan. The blonde's eyes shot open and revealed two purple circles replacing each iris. Both Yamato and Kakashi stifled a breath as they were taken aback at the sight of the new Rinnegan eyes that replaced Naruto's original sky blue eyes they had grown accustomed to. Our Rinnegan? Kakashi started, how did you dash? It was Nagato's final gift to me. As it turns out, he was my cousin. He replied happily before he remembered his death. It caused Naruto to downcast his eyes for the moment. Naruto. This is unbelievable. Yamato looked deeper into the eyes of the new Rinnegan wielder. The purple gleamed in his irises from the light bulb on the ceiling. It wasn't a full Rinnegan yet, but it was still just as intimidating. Kakashi, can you help me out here? Oh, yeah, sure thing. The masked man was still amazed at the sight, but lifted his Hitae to reveal his Sharingan. Naruto stood there for a few seconds before Kakashi spoke up again. Well, it's not an illusion, there's nothing behind it. It's not a trap either, so, it's the real deal. The wood expert was dumb-stricken. This was actually the first time he got to see this type of eye up close, but turned to a more serious facade after he realized something. Yamato looked down then smiled slightly. It seems the Uzumaki bloodline carries the Rinnegan after all. Ha! What do you mean? Kakashi brought up before receiving a look from Yamato. Well, back when I was a Chunin, there was this rumor going around the adults that a Rinnegan user was actually found. I don't remember much, but the higher-ranked ninja also said something about the Uzumaki. I was young back then, so I really didn't understand what they were talking about at the time, but now that I see Naruto here, the heir to the Uzumaki bloodline, I realize that both of those stories were actually one story. Kakashi thought coherently about it. Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that too. That was a while ago though. I guess when they saw that Kushina didn't have it, they gave up the idea. So, are you saying that I actually have a Kekii Jinkai? Naruto asked as if he were a child getting candy. Yes, it seems so, Yamato replied before giving a glance at the Jinchuriki. All right, Naruto. Let's see if it alters your seal or not. It was very quiet in the lone recovery room that Konan resided in. The ANBU already came to her room and gave her the clothes she was supposed to change into only a half-minute after Naruto left. They seemed to fit her perfectly, which kind of threw her off for the moment, but then she realized that her other clothes were missing, so she assumed that they knew her sizes from them. She then walked into the small bathroom that was on the other side of her room. A sigh escaped her lips as she looked herself up and down in the bathroom-sized mirror. What was she wearing? How could she wear something like this? As if irony was taking a crack at her itself, she came dressed in something that seemed to humiliate her. The same outfit that many other ninja wore who tried to stop her, she dressed in as well. From head to toe she bore the greenish jounin vest with a black long-sleeve turtleneck shirt underneath that had the orange Uzumaki swirl on the left arm. She also wore the same black skin-tight pants that every other Leaf Ninja wore as well, bearing the shuriken pouch on her right thigh. Then to finish it off, her sandals were that of a black color as well, leaving no difference in color change to the outfit. I guess it's what I deserve, she replied woefully. Her gaze faltered as her eyelids lowered. Konan didn't think that she was worthy of these new clothes. Those who wore this vest obtained it through honorable means to their village. I shouldn't wear something like this. The clothes seemed to mock her, and it pushed her into a further state of suppression to the past, making her leave the bathroom because she could not bear the sight of herself. The door opened not long after to her room as two ANBU appeared before her. Follow us, one of them ordered to the blue-haired Leaf Nin. She nodded silently and walked away with the two Black Ops members. Shortly later she found herself inside a small room with one table and two chairs. Two men were already inside the room and gave her a look of scorn. I see you are in Konoha. What are you doing here? The taller man asked the woman with a sneer. That only concerns me. It is none of your business, she replied in a dull tone. What did you say? The man responded back vehemently, picking her up by her jounin vest. I should kill you right now for all of the suffering that was spread across this entire village. Now, Ebiki. We shouldn't do anything to harm this one, the other man shot back to the angry jounin. Besides, we will find out, soon enough, of her true intent. Oh yeah, that's right, Inoichi. A slight chuckle escaped Ebiki's mouth, followed by a release of the woman. The blonde Yamanaka motioned for her to sit down after that little show. She sat in a chair opposite to the other man and stared unemotionally to the blonde jounin. Inoichi looked to her for a moment before he started to speak. All right, I'm going to have to put you to sleep before I can perform the procedure. Hopefully you will cooperate with me so there won't be any trouble. She shook her head in agreement before he started talking again. Okay, allow me to start, and not long after that, she unknowingly fell unconscious to a sleeping jutsu. Now, let's see what you are hiding, Inoichi stated as he placed his hand on top of her head. Flashback. Who is this and why is he even here? An 8-year-old Yahiko asked to the young girl about the same age. He's called Nagato. He looked so alone and pitiful outside that I told him to come live with us. Konan replied happily to the orange-haired boy. But he even brought a dog, sheesh. Nothing here, Inoichi thought as he read over her memories, but it seems Nagato and Konan are longtime friends. Let's go to another one. I'm staying. Jiraiya told his teammate Tsunade, who responded outraged. What? You can't be serious? Well, at least until they get on their feet. The younger Jiraiya shot back. Konan looked at the older man. She was a little worried about his stay, but he seemed to be real nice. In a way he almost seemed like a father figure, especially after they got used to him being around. Oh. Hop-in planks. What are those? Konan asked the white-haired sage. Oh, he started, well there to show who's here and who's not by the side it has been flipped to. If it's red, it means you're here. If it's white, it means you have left and can hop in any time. A grin etched across the Leafnin's face as he waited for the kids to get the pun, but that failed when the young girl asked another question. But why do we need these? Konan asked, uncertain of the uses it pertained. Well, this area is still dangerous and you'll never know when they will come here and try to attack us. The sage answered realistically. So, you're saying that if it's red, then one of us has probably been captured, and when one is white and we're all here, then that means there is an enemy disguised as one of us? She asked Jiraiya in a state of confused understanding. That's very inspective, Konan. Unlike a certain other. The sage eyed the orange-haired boy studiously. Hey, I knew what you were talking about, sort of. Yahiko retorted back. Nothing here either, but Jiraiya-sama taught them? Inoichi mentally disregarded the thought for now. Where are your darker thoughts? Why are you here? He then delved deeper into her mind. Kill me. Yahiko told Nagato with a definite voice. No. Don't do it. Konan screamed to her Rinnegan-wielding partner at the top of her lungs. Nagato. The orange-haired man shouted to a stricken teammate. It seemed as though Nagato was in a difficult situation. He was given an ultimatum to either kill Yahiko or Konan gets killed by Hanzo. If you don't do it, this girl dies. Hanzo replied to the shaken red-headed Akatsuki. Not a split second later, a solid thud was heard as Yahiko impaled himself with Nagato's kunai. Both of you have to stay alive because you are the Messiah. Yahiko replied through pained breaths. I really believe you. And nothing more was ever said as Yahiko fell to the ground in one last dying breath. Yahiko! Konan shouted, but the man never answered or got up. A serious rage enveloped over Nagato as he lost all meaning within himself. Without a moment's haste, he began to slaughter everything in his path, because nothing mattered anymore. It eventually led to a summoning that took the souls of everything his beast touched, causing the Rinnegan wielder to become paralyzed in the process by the rods that shot through his back. Nagato! A forlorn Konan called to the boy, but was ignored because of his insanity that consumed him. So, you were the real leader to begin with. Hanzo stated, crossing his arms to the crazed man before him, who knew you were the one who had the Rinnegan this whole time. Not long after that, Nagato screamed and forced his summon in the enemy's direction only to miss his opponent by Shunshin. That's pretty tragic, the blonde Yamanaka thought to himself, now I see how they came to be. What a hard way to go through life. I still don't have what I need though, so I need to keep searching. And with that, he went even further into her memories. I knew you'd be here. Konan told the man full of hatred. So, I'm assuming you won't tell me where Nagato is? The swirling orange-masked man asked in a thought-so voice. I've waited for a very long time to end you. Madara, the blue-haired girl, answered back forcefully. Toby/Madara looked at the woman with a smirk under his mask. Just so you know, I won't go easy on you just because you are one of us. Oh, one question though, do you think Naruto Uzumaki is that special? He asked in a menacing voice. Konan did not falter as she pierced through the man's one-eye glare with her own. Naruto is the embodiment of light itself, that's why every time he meets somebody, they carry the flowers of hope. And with that, Konan threw a few paper shuriken at the form of Toby. Well, I may as well tell you a few things about your friends, before you come to your imminent death. He replied coldly to the girl as he went intangible, completely evading the shuriken. Konan fell surprised to his intangibility before he brought his point back up. First of all, I was the one who made Yahiko form Akatsuki. The blue-haired girl widened her eyes in disbelief. And second, I was the one who gave Nagato the Rinnegan. He concluded to the dumbfounded girl, so, really I just wanted to get my eyes back. But you... You were just a foolish girl who didn't know anything, but now, you know where Nagato's body is hidden, so I just need to detain you. All of this new information led into a fierce battle between the two Akatsuki as Konan did the paper angel technique to further her plans to see to his demise and failure. The altercation lasted for a very long time before it came to a screeching halt. Toby/Madara had somehow used a move that completely shut off his other eye underneath the broken orange mask in consequence, but this move allowed him to warp space and time to fuse reality and imagination. This attack caused Konan to be put in a deathly encounter with the masked man. He stabbed her in the back from behind with a pointed bamboo sword and pushed her off while he started talking again. There is no peace, there can be no hope. Nagato only wanted to feel better about his existence. Oh, but you'll see him soon enough, then you can spend all of eternity lamenting your decision to listen to Naruto's garbage. As soon as he said that, the endless rain that fell over Amagakure dissipated until it completely stopped. What's going on? It can't be. Madara stated out loud as his surprise seemed to arise in his words. The blue-haired ex-Akatsuki felt it as a sign and gathered enough will to continue. Yahiko's and Nagato's desire for peace has not left this world. I have faith in Naruto as well, because he will be the bridge to peace that everyone has desired, and I will be the pillar supporting that bridge. She then raised her arms to make one last attack on the broken masked man. It seemed as though Nagato's death made her make an important decision in her life. I don't care if I am blown away in the process. I will st-. Before she could finish her sentence, a death grip was placed on her neck by the evil man. You didn't think I'd let you do something like that, did you? She could feel the life slowly fading from her body as Madara continued talking. I will wilt your flowers of hope and fade the bridge to oblivion. When I am finished with this jutsu, your life will be no more, but before I do that, you will show me where he lies. She dared to look into the man's eye as the jutsu took place. And no. I can't. No. End flashbacks. No. She screamed out in the open, jolting both Ebiki and Inoichi. A small tear fell off of her cheek from the reoccurrence, as she breathed heavily in nervousness. The Yamanaka immediately pulled his hand away as he remembered the memories of that final encounter, and shook his head at the situation. What? What did you see? Ebiki asked the other man, who slowly got up from his seated position. She's clean. He answered solemnly, looking at the floor. As it turned out, Madara was behind everything. Ebiki's face faltered at that statement. What? But I thought he was dead. I'm not sure, the blonde started, but I am positive that she wants to help us. Konan didn't say anything, but her facial features backed that statement. Inoichi proclaimed. Ebiki couldn't believe it. A former Akatsuki actually wanted to help for a change. It seemed to make him actually go a little easier on the woman. A rare sight indeed. Ebiki thought out loud. Well, since she passed, I guess we have to send her to the Hokage. She did tell us if the Akatsuki was approved to take her to her office. I suppose so, the blonde replied indifferently. Let's go. Konan got up from her seat and walked with the other two men who proceeded in front of her. Two ANBU guarded from behind, maintaining standard protocol. A short while later, they arrived at the Godame's office. She was assorting new files before her on the construction projects of Konoha. Ah. I'm assuming it went well? Tsunade asked in a rhetorical sense. Yes, Lady Hokage, Inoichi responded, and we also have information. Well, the Hokage started. What are you waiting for? Spit it out. Oh right, well, it seems the man known as Madara is the one behind everything. Ebiki stated, causing Tsunade's eyes to widen in amazement. Right. Madara is also known as Toby, the man in the orange mask. Inoichi followed up while closing his eyes and sighing. What? The man in the orange mask is Madara? Tsunade lost her words, but Madara should be dead. I said the same thing, Ebiki stated to the Hokage. Right, well, I will let the others know. In the meantime, there is something I have to discuss with this woman. Yes, Lady Hokage. They both replied in unison before they left the office. The room seemed to quiet itself once the two women were in the office alone. Tsunade walked over to her window that overlooked the village and gazed out in silence. Konan felt it was not in her place to talk as she was technically the prisoner. There was nothing for her to say. She caused a lot of damage to the leaf, and now they had somewhat captured her as a repayment to the village. It remained quiet for another moment or two before Tsunade began to speak. There were these three kids, not even old enough to live on their own. We were coming back from a mission and my partner noticed them. I didn't know what he saw in them, but he really wanted to teach them. He wanted to teach them how to protect each other. Konan listened to the story quietly as the Hokage continued. I didn't really think it was a good idea, but he saw something in those kids that I didn't at the time. So, he left me and my other teammate to help these kids learn how to defend themselves. Tsunade's posture shifted to her other leg as she crossed her arms, still eyeing the village. Days turned into weeks until one day, I received mail from my partner. He wrote me a letter to keep me updated about his well-being. He would tell me how he was doing and ask me the same. But the longer he stayed away, the more he began to tell me about those kids. Eventually, whenever I received mail from him, that's all he would ever talk about. He would begin to go on and on about it in the letter that it would fill 5 pages or more. Konan's eyes widened slightly after hearing that, but she still said not a word. Those weeks turned into months and months turned into years until, finally, he returned home. When I saw him again, I was ecstatic. Everyone was happy upon his return. But when I looked at Jiraiya's face, I could tell something was wrong. Tsunade shifted her eyes onto the blue-haired Leafneen with a sense of sadness that seemed to radiate from them. It seemed those kids really grew on him. Konan couldn't deny it. Even though her emotions and past were buried from the long and arduous years of pain and fighting, she still had feelings. It seemed that she thought of Jiraiya as a father, although he wasn't there for very long. If anything, Jiraiya also thought of her as a daughter he never had, but he passed away after that fight with pain. Now, the only people who had personal ties to herself and Jiraiya were Naruto and Tsunade. Could I ask you one question? The Sannin asked to her only other companion in the room. After receiving a silent agreement from Konan, she continued. What made you change your mind about Naruto? Konan's throat seemed dry as if she couldn't say anything. She tried her best to clear her throat to speak. After a second, she began, because Nagato believed in Naruto, and if Nagato believed in him, then I will believe in him as well. I will support his will and well-being to ensure peace in this world. It is what Nagato and Jiraiya-sama would have wanted. The Hokage looked at her slightly pleased. That is what I wanted to hear. Tsunade then shifted her attention to her desk and opened a drawer. At first, I thought you were plotting something, but yesterday Naruto told me that he was the one who found you, so it's obvious that none of this was planned. She then pulled something rectangular from the drawer and began to look at it. It might be a while, but you may redeem your name just yet. And with that the Godame threw the rectangular object toward the blue-haired ninja, who caught it with ease. The rectangular object was wrapped in a light, white silken material folded in an elegant manner. She pulled the folds apart and revealed something that took her breath away. A leaf hitayate. It matched her clothes with a coal color, and the leaf metal forehead protector gleamed impeccably in the light, showing no scratches or signs of wear and tear. It was new. It was a fresh start, which was something that felt unreal to her. The headband caused a sad smile to creep across her face as she stared at it incredulously. Naruto is busy right now being checked over by his captain, so you will have to help the village rebuild instead, part of the council's orders, but the rest of your free time will be on something bigger. Your main objective? Tsunade tossed her eyesight over to Konan before she continued, is to protect and help Naruto master the Rinnegan. Konan didn't think too hard before she made a decision. Almost as if she was unaware, she did it. Konan closed her eyes and wrapped the new hitayate over her forehead. She then twisted the fabric tails into a knot and pulled forcefully. Afterwards, she opened her eyes to reveal a newfound determination. Yes. Lady Hokage. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.